Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Aaron Matteson of Pewaukee is a Democratic candidate in the 22nd Assembly District. Aaron, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you very much.
Just curious, what do you consider the top issue in your campaign for the Assembly?
I first want to correct you. I am in the town of Lisbon.
Oh, thank you for the correction.
That makes a difference because Pewaukee is not in my district.
Okay. Town of Lisbon.
Town of Lisbon.
I apologize.
Yeah. No problems. My top issues, I would say, are education, state usurpation of local controls, and I'm going to put environment up there as well. And I can add a fourth one, which would be business startups, because I'm a businessman. So.
Wow. Okay, let's go with levy limits on local governments.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Passed 14 years ago to control property taxes. Mm-hmm. You would do away with them?
I don't know that I'd do away with them. I think, this is
loosen them?
Pardon me?
Loosen them?
Yes, I think that this is an old thing. They've been doing levies for a long time, but what it's really done is taken away further control from the local government. It's made the local governments gun shy of doing any referenda because there's limits on that, et cetera. So in a way, I think it's gone too far.
Okay. So then another issue you identified was startups, helping startups. Mm-hmm. How would you as a member of the Assembly work towards that, sir?
Okay. Like I said, I have a background in business, 25 years as a finance executive. I helped Parker Penn get them out of bankruptcy and then sold to Gillette. Mm-hmm. I helped Cyrus Erie the same way, get them out of bankruptcy. They went sold to Caterpillar. I know the ins and outs of business and what they need. Small businesses right now, they need capital. One way to do that is what they call slow capital, where they can return the money slowly. Also, they need resources and how to manage. They're usually new. This is like a one-man operation oftentimes. They need intellectual help. And I think that's something we can provide as a state. I think it pays off in the long run with big dividends. They don't really want, these are independent people. They don't want handouts, but they need some help to get, business is a complicated issue and they need some help with that. And
with your business experience and finance experience, we have approved potentially billions of dollars in tax breaks for Foxconn. Mm-hmm. Kimberly-Clark wants the same type of tax breaks. Mm-hmm. When should state government and how much help should state government give private?
Okay, I'm sorry. I understand. And I am all for trying to bring business to Wisconsin. Who isn't? The problem is that this is a good theory that was just, I think, poorly executed. Okay. We're giving them $3 billion. If you toss in the local commitments, $4 billion. Potentially.
The governor says it's tied to jobs and investment.
Some of it is. Some of it's tied to capital, which would be you would not get that back. Okay. And there are very few real ironclad commitments placed upon Foxconn to do this. So these kinds of things are very complicated. They have to be done very meticulously. You got to live in the detail. You have to know financial statements. Again, I think it was a good idea. It was just I think it's poorly done.
You would have voted against both?
I would have liked to see more commitments, more real commitments put upon them that are targets, that are accountable, and that can be, that we can actually measure and hold these dollars over their heads. I lived in China for 8 years, taught there, and including how to do business in multicultural situations. I understand that the Chinese business will look at these things differently. A contract for a Chinese business is different than it is for American. And they have different emphasis that I don't think that they understood at the Republican politicians understood. And I think they've done us a disservice here potentially by giving away too much for what we're getting.
The current state budget has a significant increase in state aid for our K-12 public schools. Based on what you hear as you talk to voters and local school officials, Should there be another significant increase in the next state budget?
Yes, that increase only got us back to levels that we were at almost a decade ago.
Okay.
So that's really getting us back, up to some par that we should have been at and even above. I mean, Wisconsin was the education state. Even in China, everybody knows Wisconsin. I made them know Wisconsin as the education state, and the University of Wisconsin itself. They know its reputation. And I have no idea why we would retract from that. That these are not expenses, these are investments that pay off in dividends in the long run. I think we have to completely refund these. There's another issue beyond funding, but we do have to refund.
Well, if we needed 300, 400 million more to boost state aid to K-12 schools, what changes in Wisconsin's tax structure would you push for to come up with that revenue?
I'm sorry, I don't have a good detailed reasoning on that one.
Okay.
I know we need to have the money. I'm not going to try to pretend that I know enough about the formula to give you a good answer on that. I know that legislatively, they're operating under the same demands that were created in the 1980s. So what a school has to perform and teach has not changed in 30-some years. And obviously the needs have changed massively since then. Mm-hmm. So we really need to address this legislative issue that nobody wants to touch. Nobody really rarely talks about this. Now, I've talked to school administrators in the districts, and they'll point to this as a problem because they got all these extra needs but no funding and no change in the legislation to fund it.
Part of the debate on K-12 education involves the growth of vouchers and choice program. Mm-hmm. Started in Milwaukee, now we're seeing statewide. Mm-hmm. What's your position on choice?
No, who's not for choice? Of course I would be for a valid choice. Problem is that these schools are not held to the same standards. They don't have to hire certified teachers. They don't have to take special needs children. I think they even get a break on buses. It's not a level playing field. So what we've done is helped a few schools at the expense of the public schools. We need to fully fund the public schools before we start talking about a school choice option.
The gridlock in the Capitol and how we pay for highways. How would you pay for a highway future? Mm-hmm. Bridges and construction and maintenance?
I'm a business analyst. Again, I'm into the details about what are cost drivers. What are the cost drivers is what I would look at. I would look at some combination of usage and who actually produces the most wear and tear on the highways. Not just miles, not just, the problem is if you put cents add cents to the gas tax, you're maybe not really making the people who do the most damage on the roads. So you have to do some combination of that with wheel taxes and registration, et cetera. But I'm not at all for tollways.
Not at all for tollways.
Not at all. I don't think they're an encumbrance. They're an unnecessary encumbrance. You can get to the same end in much more efficient ways.
The debate over the next budget for the Department of Corrections. Some Democrats who ran for governor said we could cut our prison population in half. The big question, do we need a new state prison? Sir?
No, I don't believe that. Cutting in half, I don't know about that number, but just look at Minnesota. We have almost twice the incarceration rate as Minnesota. We spend almost twice as much per citizen as Minnesota. We are 12th in incarceration rates in the country, but we are 20th in terms of violent crime. It's not working. There's a mismatch there. Minnesota stresses things like probation and parole for non-violent, the non-violent criminals, of which there are plenty in the system, and we just want to lock them up. And they do a lot more stressing of rehabilitation as opposed to just pure punishment. Now we have to punish the people who are violently criminal. There's no doubt about that. But the system is made up of a lot more people than just violent criminals.
Part of this debate involves whether we should legalize recreational marijuana or medical marijuana. Your positions?
I think we have to legalize medical marijuana. There's just no excuse in my mind for that. If somebody's badly ill, veterans who are badly ill, I've talked to people who are doing it on the sly, illegally, who are undoubtedly benefiting from this. I mean, why would you not? Why is that even? I went to my opponent's kickoff event, and I talked to her. I said, why is medical marijuana even a partisan issue? This is just helping somebody who's in dire need. She said, we can't do that because it's a gateway drug. Gateway to what? I mean, if you're a veteran and you risk your life somewhere, you can smoke pot if you want to. In my mind, and if somebody's terminally ill, it's not a gateway drug. It's more like a stairway to heaven drug.
So you're yes on medical. What about recreational?
I'm not there yet. I think we have to look at that. I mean, we've got plenty of states that have legalized it. We can look at the effects. I mean, we've seen positive results in other medical areas, and we've seen positive results in terms of opioids decreasing in some places. But that just needs to be looked at a little more closely.
UW system budget. We've had a tuition freeze on resident undergraduate for 6 years. Should it be extended to a 7th and 8th year?
I think they should be decreased. I just think
tuition should be cut, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think it's unconscionable that we would have human resources in the state that are capable of producing and that just don't because they don't go to college. Now, college today is like the high school diploma of the 1950s and 60s. High school was free then. Why would we not make the equivalent, not free, but affordable for everyone? Again, this is not an expense. It's an investment. It pays off. We have a situation where we've got unemployed people or underemployed people all over, and yet we bring others from China and India to bring skill sets now. That doesn't make any sense.
State government has approved $100 million for school safety grants. Is that enough, or do we need to change gun laws?
I don't think it's the amount that's the issue. I think a lot of that money is meant to go to providing armed, potentially armed police or et cetera in the school system. I think we can do so much more that makes much more sense. We can, universal background checks should be a give me. I mean, why would we have a law that says certain people cannot have weapons, but yet have an exception where they can go to a gun store and buy weapons? It just makes no sense. Bump stocks, obviously, that's an easy one. In a way, I mean, temporarily, we probably have to harden the schools a bit. I hate to say that. As a teacher myself, I taught for 8 years. I wouldn't want to really teach in that kind of environment, but at the moment, with the crisis as it is, we perfectly keep commercial passengers, businessmen, et cetera, safe with our, getting on an airplane.
TSA.
Yes, but we don't do that for our children who are getting killed left and right. I mean, there's so much we can do that, to me, that's an afterthought. It's too far down the stream of the problem. In business, like anywhere else, you cut off the problem at the closest to the source. If you're going to put somebody in the school to shoot back, you're already too late.
Questions on healthcare. How can we preserve and expand healthcare in rural areas of Wisconsin?
A lot of that was because we just didn't accept the full ACA. I mean, the full Medicare expansion
of
the Badger
Medicaid.
Care expansion.
Yeah.
I don't understand why would you do that? I mean, I've talked to people in my district, rural and in the city, that who are at this level. One man, he worked all his life, but he got a slight bump. It put him too much income for Badger Care and not enough for the ACA. So he's one of these tens of thousands who has fallen into this gap. He's threatening. He's got to make a choice between his own health and bankruptcy. So that's a lot of the problem in the rural areas as well.
State government, does it have a role in recruiting and retaining doctors and nurses and other medical professionals?
Well, I think it has a role in filling any drastic need that we have. I mean, that all has to be done with a cost benefit in mind. Now, as a finance person, that's the kind of thing that I did routinely, was look at cost benefit. Now, you can't just throw money at this stuff, but any need that we have in our state, the government, that's where the government belongs.
State government and Delta Dental partner in a program that subsidizes dental clinics in medically underserved areas, high poverty areas. Should that be a priority in the next Medicaid budget?
It should certainly be on the agenda.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking basic care. Again, my colleagues in China, they were all from Europe. We would have this conversation once in a while I would have this with another American, and the other foreigners would all look at each other, because we would be talking about deductibles and HMOs, and they'd look at us and go, "What are you talking about? We just go to the doctor. What's the matter with you people?"
As you meet voters in the 22nd, Are they mentioning the issue with caregivers? The AARP estimates that there's 578,000 caregivers in Wisconsin. Do we need a law or a regulation that would allow caregivers more access to be a partner in healthcare when their loved ones are hospitalized? Have you heard about that as an issue?
I'm not certain exactly what you mean. Are you saying that the caregiver for their partner to have access?
Maybe a caregiver who cares for a neighbor, and a neighbor goes to a hospital.
Okay, and provide them with a payment of some sort?
No. Do we need more? Do we need a law guaranteeing them more access in the healthcare decisions of the loved ones?
Of a neighbor?
Maybe neighbor.
I'm a little hesitant to say they'd have decision-making authority here. I thought you were just talking about the supply of healthcare givers.
Well, maybe it's not an issue that you've heard enough about, and I don't want to have you take an unfair
position. But the issue of not having enough healthcare givers to our aging population in this country is an important one, and I think part of that is going to have to be addressed by immigration.
Okay, thank you. Last question, differences with your opponent on November 6th?
They couldn't be more different. As conservative as my district is, and it's very conservative, she is far, far to the right of that. She has voted against universal background checks. She has introduced a law that would make it legal to bring guns into school. I'm against all of that. There was a Wisconsin Business Association survey that went out, and I would encourage anyone to look that up because it has answers to each of us gave. You can look at them side by side. When they asked her what the role of government was, she made a joke out of it. She said, I'm a Republican. Of course, I don't see any role. My answer was research. This country does better research in more areas than any other place in the world. I mean, I think there's a role for government, and I think it has to be efficient, and I have that finance background to both be effective and efficient, where she just wants to cut it all out.
Understand. Aaron Matteson of the town of Lisbon as a Democratic candidate in the 22nd Assembly District. Mr. Matteson, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for getting my name correct. I appreciate that.
I tried, thanks.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.